Hello and welcome to Treasury Notes, a financial education program from the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office. I'm your host, Gina Joins. Businesses of all types are required by state law to report unclaimed property to the State Treasurer's Office every year. Most of this property is in the form of money from places like bank accounts, insurance annuities, utility deposits, or stale-dated checks. But the Treasurer's Office does receive a small amount of tangible property. Most of it is personal property from safe deposit boxes. The rest is property reported from local law enforcement. Coming up in today's show, we'll talk with the Deputy Treasurer of Records Management for the Treasurer's Office about the specifics of unclaimed property and how it relates to law enforcement. But first today, a closer look at the more personal side of unclaimed property. Joining us today is Diane Billings, and we also have Dan Reed here. They are receipt specialists for the Unclaimed Property Division at the State Treasurer's Office. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Well, we're excited to talk to you today, but a lot of people don't really know what a receipt specialist is. You work in the State Treasurer's Unclaimed Property Program. Can you just start by telling us a little bit about what it is that you do?
The Receipts Department of Unclaimed Property receives the monies and the tangible items, the safe deposit boxes, from the businesses that are required by law to be turned over so we can advertise them after they've been dormant for so many years.
So explain how and why these safe deposit box contents end up in unclaimed property. Dan, could you kind of walk us through that?
Well, typically, once a safe deposit box has been dormant for approximately 5 years, the bank will notify us via a report, an unclaimed property report, and then they'll send their tangible properties in by box number.
And you work with the banks all the time on this issue.
That's correct.
I know we have a lot of different items that are found in safe deposit boxes. That's one of the more interesting things when it comes to unclaimed property. I spoke earlier about how many times unclaimed property is just it's a monetary value, or it's something that's intangible. But we have a lot of tangible items that come from the safe deposit boxes. Just tell us a little bit about what you find in these safe deposit boxes.
Just a variety of things, from keepsakes that might not mean a lot to anyone except for someone in that family, but the most are coins and jewelry, that sort of thing. We've had antiques are some of my favorites, that we have little just unique items, glass things, that sort of things, and stocks, bonds, a little bit of everything.
And we just showed a picture of some of the items that we have here on display today. Tell us a little bit about some of these items that you brought here with you as a little bit of a show and tell for us today that we have on the table in front of us.
Well, as Diane talked about some of the most frequent things we get coins, grandma's diamond rings, grandpa's railroad watch. There's always knives. Knives come in and people that save knives. Collectibles such as baseball cards and stamps. And one of the other things we have over there is a little bank. That little round button bank was an antique that came out of a safe deposit box.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool. And now this bank that you said it's a little round button bank. What did you find in it? There was some actual property inside of it.
It came in and it was locked, and we have to make sure that there's nothing illegal, or make sure what the contents of that bank were. And it took us a while to get it open. It ended up having a $20 gold piece and a $5 gold piece in it.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. And I'm just going to reach over and show everyone there that this little button bank is just one of the many items that you said we find often in safe deposit boxes. So many other things: jewelry, coins, baseball cards, keepsakes, memorabilia. Once these items come to the State Treasurer's Office, John Purdue, of course, is the State Treasurer, and he gets all these items in the office. Is there any way that people can get them back if they find out that they are their items?
Yeah, we actually catalog those, and the names of the owners that were listed at the bank are placed on the Unclaimed Property newsletter that goes out several times a year to notify the owners or their heirs that this property is available to be claimed. And you can go on our website and initiate a claim.
And many of these items are family heirlooms or have some personal significance. What is it like sorting through these items? Diane, could you speak to that? Because sometimes they're very personal.
They are, and sometimes it is sad because you know that they held on to that because it was so special to them, but on the flip side of that, it is so rewarding that a family member comes forward when they see great-grandma or grandpa's box and they're reunited with these items that they didn't know were there. So it is emotional, you know, going through it, and you feel like you know a little bit of that family, but you're also happy to help them out, to get it back to them.
And a lot of times they can be documents, not just items like coins and things like that, but wills, different stock certificates, bonds, I'm sure are in some of these safe deposit boxes. What happens to those items once you receive them?
There's also power of attorneys and many things like that. We keep all of these documents. They're available for either the owner or the heirs. We never discard any legal document that hasn't been taken to the courthouse. And
do you ever run across anything that's really truly unique? Something that you are surprised by?
we have one of the things that caught my eye right now is we have a presentation pistol that was awarded to a veteran in 1917.
Wow.
And he was from the Army's 1st Division. And we've had one of our local government specialists trying to find either him or his heirs to get that united back to his family.
That's interesting. Diane, do you have any memorable items that you've come across in your years working with unclaimed property?
The ones that are the most fun to me, like I mentioned previously, are the ones that take me back to my childhood. There's pot holders that like my grandma had in her kitchen, and the little spectacles, you know, that people wear, trading cards from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and just a lot of fun things that, you know, come through.
And many of these items are valuable antiques. What do you look for to try to determine if it is a valuable antique or if it's just a family keepsake?
We use eBay. eBay is a big resource, but we also use other online resources to try to determine the value of like pieces. We look for markings. We have a diamond tester to see, you know, if at least the diamonds are real or not. But we look to see if it's marked 14 karat gold or sterling silver or platinum.
Okay, so Diana, it sounds like you do a lot of research in your job. The two of you both do. Have you learned a lot about collectibles on this job, or is there something you didn't know that you've started to learn as you've become engulfed in this process of determining what is unclaimed property?
I've been very enlightened.
Yeah.
Coins, especially in currency, it's very interesting that two that look so similar, same condition and everything, just because they have one small marking difference, or maybe they were made at one mint as opposed to another, the value can be so significantly different. And also flatware patterns was something that interested me, how the same type flatware, same error, but one pattern can bring a lot more value than another.
And now if no one comes forward and claims these safe deposit box items, eventually they go to auction, right? And that's part of the process that we do here at the Treasurer's Office. Explain to me a little bit about why we do the auctions and how you really select some of the items that will be featured in the auctions.
Well, a lot of times we try to go by the date that it came in. We try to keep things for at least a year from the date that it was published. And because of our restraints as far as space to store things, we do eventually have to turn them over to auction. We send them to an online auction where they're appraised, and we have minimum bids set for these items, and we generate the most return for those items as possible.
Yeah, State Treasurer John Perdue, he started these online auctions several years ago for unclaimed property. How have they been working out? I know prior to that he had done many live auctions over the course of so many years, but now the majority of the auctions are online, although we still do some that are live.
Well, through the use of this online auction house that we do use, and the availability of an appraiser, we do, like Diane had mentioned with the currency, two bills may look alike to us. However, the appraiser can tell that we may have something, we may have a diamond in the rough. We had a penny that went for, I believe, $600 or $700 that it was just turned into the auction company in a pile of pennies. And our current auction has currency on there that we thought were just, it was nice $2 bills from the 20s, but they were in sequential order and they had stars. And these $2 bills were worth approximately $100 for a couple $2 bills.
Wow, that's incredible.
So these auctions are going great.
And people are bidding on the items, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just here in West Virginia because it's online. The bidding is opened up to people around the nation, really.
That is. That's one of the biggest advantages to the online auctions is you have a much wider audience and you get more value for the owner. And the online auctions also are advertised. People are hitting that site just to look for specific things. So you got coin collectors and you hope to get a better value by doing that.
Diane, you mentioned value for the owner. So I think it's important now to note that we do these auctions. This money just doesn't come back to the Treasury and go to the state. It's kept in perpetuity for the owners of these items so that if they ever are found or if the owners ever come forward, they have the right to claim that, right?
Right. They're just going to have money instead of tangible items now. So yes, they will. It's the same as any claim. You initiate it the same, go through the same process, and they just will have money instead of the items that were originally in there.
And there are some advantages to the online auction, but as I said, we do a few live auctions as well throughout the year. At the State Fair of West Virginia is when we're going to be doing another live auction. Tell us about what happens there at the State Fair. And this is now going to be, I think, our second year of doing a live auction at the State Fair. It's a fun time for everyone.
It's a great time. We've sort of termed it a flash auction. We just stop everything and we have 10 lots that go on at auction time. And we take a good variety of things. Most of those items there will be things that either those items or items like those will be at the fair. And it gives fairgoers an opportunity to see what the Treasurer's Office does and gives them an opportunity, to bid on things and sort of touchy-feel.
Yeah, and the displays are always a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
What about your experience, Diane, just being there at the State Fair and dealing with this live auction?
Oh, it has been a lot of fun, and it has generated excitement a little bit for the fairgoers. They can come by and see because they are displayed nicely, and they'll bring people back to show them what's in there for the next day. And then just the friendly bidding between when the auction actually happens, whether you're bidding or you're watching it, they have really just been fun to have, and people have enjoyed and learned a little bit about what we do. They ask questions, so that gives us an opportunity to tell them, how the Treasurer's Office works with unclaimed property.
And it helps educate people about the online auctions as well, yes, which are done periodically throughout the year, and people can just go online to check that out, right, Dan?
They can check our website, and there's links on there that take them to the auction company. It goes straight to the West Virginia State Treasurer's auction site, and we try to run those periodically throughout the whole course of the year. We've got them scheduled now into October, I believe.
Fantastic. Again, wvtreasury.com. There's a link to the live auctions, and we have one going on right now there. It's up on your screen. Lots of different items available in the live auction, but always a nice opportunity for people. And we encourage, as we said, it's open up to people all over the nation, but we encourage West Virginians to go on there and see if there's something they like and bid as well, because it does help the state. Yes. So it's a great program that we do, but I have to say, the Treasurer's Office does quite a few programs. We have cash management, we do the Smart 529 program, Unclaimed Property is a big program for us, but I think you two must have the most interesting jobs getting to go through these safe deposit box items. Just tell me a little bit about why you like this part of your job and what it entails for you.
It is interesting because we kind of get to see from a different angle and from just seeing a whole different process. The greatest hope is for it to get back to the owners.
Right.
For the things to come in and us inventory them and see a little bit about that person almost, and then if they're returned and you get to speak to them, that's awesome. But if it goes to auction and getting to see how much it bids for, watching the bidding, that's all exciting, and it's always something different, always.
And Dan, what do you like most about your job with unclaimed property?
Well, it is fantastic to see all the different things that come in and what people deem as valuable to them.
Sure.
But the most rewarding part is to see that owner or their heirs reunited with their property.
Any final thoughts as we wrap up this interview? As I said, it's a great opportunity for people to find out what the Treasurer's Office does, go online, look at our unclaimed property auctions, but then the owner always has the rights to that money once that item is sold. So it's a really good opportunity. We're still, our number one mission, I guess, is to still get that money, get those items back to the rightful owners.
It sure is. And I think if I could say anything, everyone needs to search for their names or that of their families. The most common misconception is, oh, well, I didn't have any rich relatives. Well, unclaimed property is not about having rich relatives. It is about things that may have been forgotten, or that safe deposit box that great-grandma had that has life insurance for you or stocks.
Yeah.
So we just encourage you to look always to see if you have unclaimed property.
Yeah, that's such a fantastic point. And again, I just want to reiterate to people that they can go online, wvtreasury.com. There's a really quick search on our website. You just go in, type in a name. You can even type in just a last name to search and see if you or a family member have unclaimed property, and you never know. It happens more often than you think, right, Dan?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both so much for being here with us today. I appreciate what you do for the Treasurer's Office, and we appreciate you talking about the Unclaimed Property Program, especially all these nice things that we get to see come through from the safe deposit boxes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jean.
All right. Well, we're going to pause for a quick moment and take a break. But when we return, the Deputy Treasurer of Records Management will join us to explain how local law enforcement may have unclaimed property and what happens once that property is turned over to the State Treasurer's Office. Stay with us.
Mark! Anna! Ooh! Hey! Hey! Forgot your lunch. Hey! Hey!
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent, because kids in foster care don't need perfection. They need you.
Welcome back to Treasury Notes. I'm your host, Gina Joins. Joining us now is Mike Comer. He's Deputy Treasurer of Records Management for the State Treasurer's Office. And Mike also deals a lot with unclaimed property, specifically the law enforcement side. Mike, thanks so much for joining us here today.
It's great to be here.
And we're happy to have you with us to talk a little bit more about how unclaimed property and law enforcement have a relationship. But first, just a little bit of your background. Your background's in law enforcement for the most part.
It is.
So that's really your area of expertise.
Well, I did 25 years with the state police, and then I've been pretty much in my public servant life, starting at age 20 in law enforcement or security in some realm since that time. So yes.
And we talked to Diane and Dan earlier with the Treasurer's Office and his Unclaimed Property Division about safe deposit boxes and the items that come from safe deposit boxes and end up in unclaimed property and eventually are auctioned off by the state. But the Treasurer's Office also receives a lot of property that comes from law enforcement agencies, typically from their evidence rooms and different types of places like that. So explain how property from law enforcement does make its way into the Unclaimed Property Program and how it eventually becomes into the state Unclaimed Property Program.
Well, here in the state of West Virginia with the Treasurer's Office, we deal with law enforcement unclaimed property from evidence rooms. And it's a little different flavor of unclaimed property, whereas the safety deposit box unclaimed property is from businesses. We're dealing with actual property seized by law enforcement agencies for many number of reasons under official capacity that end up in evidence rooms. The 300 and some evidence rooms that we have statewide from multi-agency, state, county, and city municipalities.
So how does this property eventually make its way to unclaimed property, because I know it, if it's evidence in a case or if it needs to be kept for so long, it usually is by the police department. It's not like it's turned over right away.
Yeah, the purpose for the property to go to the evidence rooms is, in fact, usually for evidentiary purposes. And over time, oftentimes, items lose their evidentiary value, and they either lose contact with the person, or the person is not entitled. In the case of firearms, the person is not legally entitled in some cases to receive their firearms back. And once items have been abandoned over a certain period of time, they actually fall under the definition of unclaimed property.
So you talk about firearms as being one type
That's one
of that
type.
property. What are some other things that would be unclaimed?
Tangible piece of property that you could imagine that a law enforcement agency would seize for evidence, and this could be vehicles, four-wheelers, firearms and ammo, but also jewelry, items that are stolen in burglaries. So it's actually a wide range.
I think I've heard you say before, lawn mowers, weed whackers,
Weed eaters.
tools,
Yes.
those types of things.
Yes, absolutely.
Just a wide range of different items that could end up in evidence rooms around the state. Firearms, again, as you said, have always been a part of unclaimed property when it comes to local law enforcement. What happens to those firearms once we receive them? It's got to be quite a big process to deal with that type of property.
It is, and it's a very different process depending on the items. We really have two classifications of property that we deal with, the firearms and ammo, and then everything else, which could be cash, currency, coins, tangible items as I described. Firearms and ammo is a little different flavor, where the code specifically tells us what we can do with those items. And those items, in other words, the tangible items, all the other items, you mentioned the weed eaters, a lot of those items, though maybe they don't have huge commercial value, it's tremendous value because we have the ability to donate these items. These law enforcement agencies can donate these items to nonprofits or any state agency that provides education or health. And oftentimes, those items are repurposed and it's very beneficial to those nonprofits. Tangible items also go through the auction process similar to the safety deposit box items that you discussed earlier. But firearms are strictly, the only thing I can do with a firearm is sell it at an auction, but that auction is restricted to federal firearms dealers. And that restriction is under Title 18 of the federal code, along with our law that mandates that we sell only to licensed firearm dealers. So we work with ATF, and we have procedures that we vet and do background checks on each of the persons that are buying firearms from us, that they are in fact federal firearms dealers.
So it's not an auction that's open to the general public?
No, it's restricted.
And last year was the first one auction like that the office did, and it was fairly successful.
It was very successful. Regardless where you are with the gun industry in this country, the gun industry is alive and well, and those items bring great value, and they sell, and we were able to generate a lot of proceeds.
Well, the interesting part about generating the proceeds from these firearms auctions is that that money can go back to the police department and or the sheriff's department from which it came from. And explain how that process works.
Well, as I mentioned, the safety deposit items come from businesses, but these items often come in the possession of these law enforcement agencies, and officers really, maybe in many cases, risked his life to secure this evidence. So it's a little different flavor of property. And with that said, we're dealing with the public sector, we're dealing with law enforcement agencies. Our brand of unclaimed property, we can actually create net proceeds that the law allows those agencies to apply for. So all of the net proceeds, all the agencies that we sold firearms applied for net proceeds, and we repurposed those net proceeds back to those agencies.
And a lot of times, I know we've talked about this before, but these agencies then are getting to turn around and use, maybe in some cases, getting several $1,000s
Yes.
back to their agency
Absolutely.
to use for canine units, specialized equipment. Talk about that.
Vest, equipment. There's, and I can say this being a career law enforcement person, there's a couple things that we know about law enforcement. It's become more technical, and it has also become more dangerous. And with that said, it's become more expensive. And the nice thing about what we do with unclaimed property is I think we help soften the blow for some of those municipalities and agencies that are really relying upon taxpayer money to fund their officers. And so I think we've had success in putting some of those proceeds back with those agencies.
So let's talk a little bit, Mike, about the actual auctions themselves. We have another one coming up this year. Can you tell me a little bit about when it is, where it is, and who can register to go ahead and be a part of it?
We'll have on our online website instructions for those federal firearms dealers to get the application and apply, and then we will do a background check on them and we'll send them an invite. But also, we will mail out to every registered federal firearms dealer in the state of West Virginia an invitation as well. And once we receive their information, we then go through a process with ATF where they're vetted, and then they're sent an invite to come, and they'll be pre-registered with bidder numbers and bin locations, and we take, because we are the Treasurer's Office, we're equipped to do credit cards, which actually about $50,000 worth of our auction last time was through credit cards, and we're really set up to be in retail in that sense better than probably some of the other state agencies. It just works pretty well.
And of course, a lot of measures taken to ensure safety
Yes.
and security of the items and the people who are attending these auctions. And the next one, I think, is scheduled for sometime in September.
It is,
correct?
September 24th at the Guard Armory in Millwood, West Virginia, which is in Jackson County, near Ravenswood, between Ravenswood and Ripley on State Route 2. But it is in a secure Guard facility, and of course I will have security, either the state police or local sheriff's department providing the security, and those auctions will be restricted just to those federal firearms dealers, though.
And we encourage, if you are an FFL, to go on our website, wvtreasury.com, find out more information about the auction. If it's something that interests you, of course, you can always call our office as well. Any final thoughts, Mike, that you want to leave us with?
It's just being in law enforcement for several years, it's good to see that we're actually creating some proceeds to go back to those agencies, especially those that need it to help equip their officers to keep them safe. And I think that part of the law we're very happy with and glad to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you so much,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Appreciate all the information you shared with us today. And that is all the time we have for today's show. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can always get the latest information from the State Treasurer's Office. You can follow us on Facebook, we're on Twitter, or always go to our website. Keeping you informed on the Library Television Network, I'm Gina Joins with the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office.